This is how I made my thesis, Photosynthesis. I already knew I wanted to focus on organics, mainly foliage, since I enjoyed the junior biome project so much. So in the spring semester of my junior year, an alumni sent me a beautiful image of an orangery at the Castle Ashby, which is located in the UK. I instantly fell in love, but I wanted to put my own twist on the plants inside the orangery. I came across images of radiated flowers in Fukushima, and I knew that I wanted my thesis to combine the two. I gathered references and created concept art to lay down a blueprint for the look and feel of the game. I also referenced other games for additional inspiration. I wanted the environment to look abandoned but beautiful. From there, I went deeper into research and created a curated peer ref to reference as I work. Once I solidified the visual development, I started with a blockout for basic composition and for gameplay. After getting an idea of what the environment looked like, I measured the orangery based on pictures, then I started modeling the orangery in Maya since everything around it depended on the structure. I wanted to keep the integrity of a traditional orangery but also add some creativity. I mainly changed the column designs and spacing of the smaller columns. I separated out the mod kit by color for UV efficiency. For the props, I had 2 types of benches, a large pot, a small pot, planters for smaller plants, and planters for bigger plants, and grades. I modeled them alongside the orangery to know the prop scale relative to the building. I stopped there and put it into Unreal. I checked for mod kit clipping issues or scale issues. I held off on the floor of the building since the foliage affected a section of it. Once I was satisfied, I continued to the foliage. I started with the Camellia Japonica plants. I considered the time frame and I settled on using the Camellia Japonica for both tall trees and shorter shrubs. I planned an atlas compiled of leaves and leaves with branches. I used a mix of both to lower poly count but also give volume to the foliage. The recipe I follow for creating most foliage is ZBrush, then Substance Designer, then SpeedTree, then back to ZBrush or Maya if needed. I sculpted the leaves and leaves with branches in ZBrush and exported the normal and height textures into Substance Designer, since I believe that using those textures from ZBrush gives the textures a more organic touch. I use those textures as bitmaps to create other textures of the leaf: base color, ambient occlusion, roughness, and normal. Then I put those textures into SpeedTree. From there I can make quick variations of tall shrubs and short bushes. Then I brought it into Maya to hand place flowers on the bush. Same concept. I made the petals in ZBrush, exported the textures to Substance Designer, but this time I hand placed the petals in Maya. After I hand placed them, I put them into Engine. I checked once again for any errors. So at the end, I had 6 variations of tall trees, 3 tall shrubs, 2 bushes with no flowers, and 1 bush with flowers. I considered the stages of life of plants. So in Engine, I used the SpeedTree variation node for slight green hue changes and changed the base color and created a pile of leaves for dead leaves on the ground. For the rainbow eucalyptus, again, I created the leaves and leaves with branches in ZBrush and then used those textures and put them into Substance Designer. Then I sculpted the trunk and roots in ZBrush with Z-spheres. I opted for ZBrush to push the organic feel of this massive tree. I went through a few passes since I wanted the tree to be one with the building. I hand placed the leaves and leaves with branches in Maya. I put it into Engine to see if there were any errors. With this done, I start on the broken floor. Since roots of trees are notorious for uprooting sidewalks, I used that as a reference when recreating the uprooted floor. I blocked it out in Unreal and then brought it into ZBrush to sculpt the damage. When I was satisfied with the sculpt, I used Decimation Master to put it into Maya without too much difficulty. I quickly quad-drawed over the meshes and put them into Unreal once again to check the scale and placement. I used the high poly to bake onto the low poly in Substance Painter. For the ivy, I reached out to alumni Caitlin Johnson to ask how she approached it in Last of Us 2. To make it voluminous, she said to use the combination of cones and cylinders with a tiling texture of branches and leaves. I created the tiling texture in ZBrush since I like the organic feel of ZBrush, then used vertex painting to make a triple blend of branches with leaves, just branches, and nothing. On top of that, place individual ivy leaves. Due to the time restrictions, I utilized the Foliage tool in Unreal to paint on the ivy. I also made a basket of other shapes and branches. Lastly, the character. I modeled the arm in Maya and put it in a logical outliner system so that when I started binding it to the skeleton, it would be efficient. I binded the skeleton and animated it to my liking and functionality. From this point, I put it into Engine to check for animation issues. After I got all the assets to a solid spot, I UV'd and textured. All the textures of the models besides the foliage were done in Substance Painter. Once done in Substance Painter, I adjust accordingly in Unreal. I used material instances where I could. To populate the space, I used a combination of Foliage tool and hand placing. I strategically placed all the assets with the composition and gameplay in mind. I put in an HDRI and adjusted the directional light to match it, and this is how it came out. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown on my thesis, Photosynthesis. Thank you so much for watching!